What's up, guys? Justin Napier here with the final, last old Ironslides interview of this year. And I've got the man who took an old school muscle car down a mountain.
A couple of mountains now.
A couple of mountains, all right. We got Kiely Mackey. All right, man. Well, we're gonna start off the top, man. First of all, tell us about that mountain. We got to start off with something really cool. Tell us about that mountain.
All right. So we've done, I think this is the third one I've done in the satellite. And the first one, it was like cheat code. It was perfect because I'd been there before, but then it was also the first time I'd been to a mountain at all in the satellite. So the first one I went to, good starter event, get used to driving it on a mountain, realize that, oh, wow, this thing is about as wide as any of these roads if you try and get it across them. That went well. Then we had another one in Kentucky, and that one was harder. At that time, it was the hardest one we had done. And then this most recent one in a new place in Kentucky. Oh, my God. It's by far the fastest street drifting I've ever done. Sorry, there was a time when I was young, I used to street drift a little bit. Really fast, really grippy. You've got guys that are just rock solid that you've known for 15 years and know them to never wreck, blasting off the mountain all around you. Your heart is just trying to shoot out of your chest. You come back after 2 runs and spend an hour calming down before you can go back out again. It's like, I know it's going to make me sound like maybe a wuss, but anybody else that went to that one, most of them they're probably going to agree. They're going to feel the same way.
It's funny you say that, because I was literally just at Fuel Fest Atlanta this last weekend, and yes. I had somebody ask me like, "Hey, you gonna go do the mountains?" And I was like, "Man, I don't think so, because with all due respect and professionalism, I don't have what it takes to do it, because it looks terrifying, and I mean, while the media looks amazing, I can't imagine the driver's perspective."
I don't. So of course I have no involvement in I want to let the people that are running things run things, and they're doing a great job. But I don't know if I want to be upset at the people that run it, or if I want to be proud, like, y'all are doing a great job for making it so much harder every time. When I went to the first one I went to, I would have been like, half my friends, guys, come on, like, apply, let's go do this. I want to go be on this mountain with you guys. And now, as it's gone on, it's gotten so much harder each time that, at least half of the people are the same people over and over again right now. They're bringing in some new folks, but you get to a point where it's like, I don't know what it's like to be in war, but it's like you're a Vietnam vet. It's like you're bonded by it. You don't want to put anyone else into it, really. That sounds a little crazy, but I don't want to recommend it to my friends. I don't want to see my friends' cars get wrecked because I said, yeah, let's go do this thing.
Yeah.
That's how wild it is, man.
Wow. It definitely sounds like something you kind of build yourself up to. You know what I mean? Yeah. You got to go through the stages. Anyways, man, sounds brutal. All right, let's take a couple of steps back. How did you get into drifting?
All right. So I'm originally from South Carolina. I'm from Great Falls, South Carolina, middle of absolute nowhere. And there's a couple of things that came together to put me into drifting. One, my father was a wholesale buyer, so $100 and $200 cars would just show up in the yard, either for me to drive or fix up and sell, or for whatever reason when I was a teenager. And occasionally something wouldn't be worthy of selling, or maybe it had a title issue or whatever. And we would go dirt road bashing in these things. And at one point, we had a 1981 Corolla 1.8 that my buddies and I realized, like, kind of slid okay. Oh, man, this thing kind of works. And we put a roll cage in this thing. We've done a bunch of things that maybe seem silly today, but were a lot for us to do when we were teenagers. And we took this thing on all the Hales Gold Mine dirt roads and Waxhaw Village dirt road and all these, like, it's like an 8 mile long dirt road near me. And I mean, we were just teenage rally drivers from 10 o'clock at night until 5 a.m., you know, just having a good time. And back home, there's nobody to stop you. Eventually, at some point, I ended up with a 240 SX that I'd gotten for a few $100. And I would show up to my one friend's house. You know, it was like the first guy in our friend group to buy his own house and stuff. So it was a party house. And it was in a big Y in the road that had a lot of a paved center section. And I would show up to his house doing, how do I explain it? It was Arab drift activities. It wouldn't quite be called drifting today. But I managed not to wreck the car, so everybody thought I was doing really well. And himself and some other people started saying, "Oh man, you're a drifter. You're drifting. You're this, that, and other." This is 2001. I had no idea what a drifting was. So he talked to me about it a little while. He had a couple of drinks. I didn't really drink back then. And he whipped out the DVDs. And
the DVDs.
The DVD. Oh yeah, DVDs. And they were barely DVDs. DVDs were pretty fresh. And it wasn't an option. It was this other thing that I'd love to find that video today, because the person they were featuring was called Drifter X. And it was this orange hatchback with a signal stripe up the side. It was very candy, very slant, like low. It had what became my choice wheel for years. Vienna Courage's on it. The thing was good looking, man. Anyway, I'm watching this video and I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And yeah, that's what I want to do. So that moment, I knew what drifting was and knew I wanted to do a whole lot of it.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. So your first drift car, so like your car, your 240 SX that you bought, did you like eventually convert it into more of a drift car with angle kit and such? So that was like your official first
around
grassroots car?
Yeah, around 0203. I guess we did have like the angle washers. That was all we had to start with. And I took that gray hatch, and I'd seen some car in a magazine that was like a shiny military green. It was like military green, but shiny. I guess you call it olive. And I gathered together all this stuff. I made my own 5-lug swap by drilling my own hubs, and we put Starion wheels on this thing and painted the centers black to look like 3-piece wheels, because we didn't know where to get any 3-piece wheels. And oh God, this is a story. I'll have to tell it quick. I knew I needed a swap, and I wanted an SR swap because that was the easiest and most sensible thing. Just learned about them. So I went to our local importer in Greenville, and the guy was super cool. Gives me this swap. Was a red top S13 swap. I go home, swap this engine in to this hatch, and it fires up. Within a minute, it gets a rod knock, because I didn't know anything about the oil pans on SRs and how they get dented in the middle. And I call him up and I tell him what's going on. And he's like, I probably shouldn't give you a warranty. I want to give you a warranty, but I don't have any SRs. He's like, would you settle for a Skyline motor? And I'm like, I don't know anything about that. Like, aren't they all-wheel drive? He's like, no, most of them aren't. And I'm like, I don't know. I guess it's my only option. Sure. Okay. And he gives me the whole front clip to an R32. It's an RB20 DT. It's not anything great.
Oh, okay.
And as far as wiring goes, I didn't know anything about wiring. So we ended up using basically the entire harness from that car got laid over top of the rest of the harness to the 240. And my username on a lot of forums and one of my emails is still Swap in the Dark to this day, because I was trying to do this swap completely blind, didn't know anything about anything. I was just on the internet trying to get information. We ended up getting this RB20 in there, and man, for years, RB20s were good enough for me. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people still run it. I mean, doesn't is it Ryan Literal still drives one?
Still RB guy, yeah. And don't get me wrong, I probably would not choose an RB20 today, but at the time when a whole swap was $900 with a trans and everything, it made some sense. So yeah, I had that RB20 in that car, and I got to where I was kind of street drifting a good bit. But then I decided I wanted to take it a little more seriously, not like competitive seriously, but I wanted to make a car that I could take to events. I didn't even know where to go to an event. I was still in South Carolina. So I came across a coupe that was just like 30,000-mile car that's been sitting for 10 or 15 years. And I got a fresh RB20 and I 5-lugged it. And I was starting to come to Maryland for my job then. And I talked to Brian Wilkerson at MA Motorsports. And he knew some guy that had a set of wheels for sale. I put together this car and drove it from home to Maryland, where I was then working on and off. Like I'd work in Maryland a week and be home a week. And one day, my girlfriend and I had talked to some people about this and decided we're going to drive up to New Jersey for a drift event. By now, it's 2004. So we drive up to New Jersey. I had no idea. I'd never been through a toll in my life. This was my first time going through tolls.
That's the first thing you remember about the whole trip is the toll.
Oh yeah, because it becomes pretty important. So I got $8, geez, 10 more bucks, geez, $6, come on. So we keep going. We get there. By the time we get there, the price to drift was supposed to be like $50 or $75. I get there, and they go to take your money, and they're like, "All right, it'll be $125." And I'm like, "Bro, I barely had the 75, and now I've paid tolls." And I was like, "I thought it was going to be this much. I'm sorry." And this guy Matt Petty was like, "Whoa! So you drive from, that's a South Carolina tag?" I'm like, "Yeah." "You drive from South Carolina?" I'm like, "No, I drove from Maryland. I'm from South Carolina. So first event, blah, blah, blah." He goes, "Hold on." He gets on the bullhorn and he starts yelling out to everybody. He's like, "This kid drove all the way from South Carolina." I'm like, "No, I didn't." Said, "Shut up." I'm like, "This kid drove all the way from South Carolina to come drift. It's his first event ever. Y'all aren't scared he's going to beat you, are you? You're going to let him run? You're let him compete? I'm just going to let him give us the normal amount of money." And everyone's like, "Yeah, of course, sure, whatever." And I went out and I started drifting that day. And I didn't know if I was doing well, poorly, whatever. I was so focused on just trying to drive that I really wasn't paying attention to other people, which I should have been doing, but whatever. My girl was with me. She was like pumped. I guess she thought I was doing okay. And then this Matt Petty guy comes and sits down in the car with me. He's like, "Take me for a lap." I'm like, "Okay." Take him for a lap. He's like, "Why are you so handsy? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's hard to fight this wheel." He's like, "Wheel shouldn't be fighting you." And I'm like, "Well, I don't have any power steering, so you know." He's like, "What? You got to have power steering. You can't be doing something." And then that was so long ago that he asked me about my diff, and I was like, "Well, I got a welded diff." And he's like, Welded diffs are junk. You got to at least get a this or that." And I'm like, "Oh, sorry." And I think I had 225 fronts and 255 rears. He's like, "What kind of tire are you on?" And I told him. He's like, "That's way too big. That's ridiculous." And I'm like, I didn't know.
Yeah,
He's
2004
like, "All right, well,
standards
just
for
get back
sure.
out there, do what you're doing, but get further from this and closer to that." And I'm like, "Okay." So the end of the day comes, and they line everybody up for this thing. There's only going to be a winner, so you get a trophy, and you get in like $500 or something. And this dude tells me I won. I did what? And then this fella in the crowd starts complaining, and he gets on the Matt Petty guy gets on. I say guy, like he's a guy that runs Club Loose to this day. Matt Petty gets on the mic and he's like, "All right, well, since everybody's bitching about it, I'm still giving this kid the trophy, but so and so is next in line, so he's getting the money." And I was like, "Whatever, I don't care. I'm so happy. I don't know what to do." And so I'm loading up my car, packing up my girlfriend, and we're getting ready to leave. And Matt Petty comes over to me. He's like, "You're from Maryland?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, Baltimore? I was like, near Baltimore. He goes, there's a place called Mid-Atlantic Motorsports. You ever heard of it? And I was like, yeah, I know exactly where it's at. I'm like kind of scared to go there, but yeah. He's like, well, you got a $500 credit there now. Like,
No.
what? So that's what I had. And I went back to Maryland and I walked up to the counter of Mid Atlantic Motorsports, who's right by my house back then. And I told what turned out to be Ray what I had. He, what? Yeah, I don't know anything about that dude. And he's like, let me get Brian. And he got Brian, and Brian's like, oh, yeah, I guess I owed Matt or whatever. Yeah, sure. Like, I don't know what to give you. Just we'll figure it out in time, okay? We're not going to do you wrong. I was like, okay. He's like, is there anything cheap we can get you to get started? Like you got credit, you know? I was like, I need some tires changed. So I started getting tires changed there. This is in 2004. And after a couple of months of changing tires, one day I walked in and Ray was like, I'm busy, man. Like, do you know how to use a tire machine? I was like, yeah. He goes, you're wearing flocks. Can you not like knock your fucking toes off or something? I'm like, all right. And I started using their tire machine to change tires. And I still change tires today on that same machine.
Wow.
20 years later, I work at Mid Atlantic Motorsports and I still change my tires on that machine. So that's probably the best deal anybody's ever gotten on tire changes.
That's crazy. So when, like, so at some point they offered you a job, or you asked, or like when
So
did
no. Brian and I became like we're not the closest in the world. We became friends, and we ended up going to events together, kind of caravanning to events back in the day when we both do U.S. Drift or Streetwise and things like that. And I never built my cars there. We weren't close enough for that. But like if I got in a pinch, needed to get a car on a lift one night, he'd let me. Or like I said, I'd always be changing tires, and sometimes I'd help him wire something. A couple of times they had like SEMA builds that they called me in just to have another pair of hands. And I guess about 3.5 years ago, I was working at a restoration shop. I work on old cars a lot. I was working at a restoration shop. I liked it there. Pay was good. Everything was pretty nice. But the old dudes, I've known them my whole life. They argue like the Tuttles from Orange County Choppers. I say that with love, but they argue like that all the time. And even though I know they're going to calm down, like them slamming the door, I'm leaving, I'm pulling my money out of here tomorrow. You know, they're going to come in the next day and they're gonna drink their coffee together and they're going to be fine. But it stressed me out. It kept me worried all the time that wasn't what was going to happen. So Brian put out just like a Facebook post of we need somebody in MA that's kind of a jack of all trades. You know, light fab, lots of drift car knowledge, history, this, that, and another. And it just everything he listed off, I was like, yep, that's me.
Yep, I'm on the way.
Yeah, and I told my girl, I was like, yeah, no, but like, it's just not going to pay enough. It's not going to work out. And she's like, it's a shop half a mile from your house. Could you at least go talk to the guy? So I messaged him, and he was like, I can't believe something along the lines of, I can't believe it took you this long to message. He's like, I'm glad you messaged or something. I was like, oh man, that feels great. And I was like, but I'm scared that, you know, I know shops don't pay a lot, like drift shops do not pay a lot, and I'm worried it's not going to work out money wise. I'm like, I'm just going to tell you my bottom dollar right out of the gate. And if you can do it, you can do it. And if you can't, I understand. Let's still be friends. And I told him that number. And he left me on red for 2 days.
He was like, well, let me look at my other options real quick.
Yeah, he probably did. Absolutely. When he messaged me back, he said, yeah, man, I can do that. I've got some good news and some maybe not good news, but not bad news. I was like, all right. His good news is I'll pay you that. And, you know, you'll have, I'm sure you didn't by your description at the other place. He's like, but you'll have like a 401k and real insurance here. He goes, it won't take much out of your pay. And it's like, you'll have all that here. And we pay a part of stuff. Like, you know, they do good business stuff. And he said, the bad news is, he's like, I know you want to leave a 2 weeks notice and you don't want to leave behind any bad juju, but like, can you start in 2 days? or something like that, which would have been like a Wednesday. And I was like, cool. But I ended up talking to the guys I was working with. It all worked out, and I've been with MA ever since. And nowhere's perfect, but it's pretty good. Yeah, I like it. And like I say, I'm a half mile from home, man.
Hey, that's pretty sweet. You can just about walk there, huh?
I do. Well, I ride my scooter there. I ride whatever, junk bike I'm tinkering with this week. Cornfields across the street and MA down the street. It's great.
So, man, we haven't even gotten to dive down into the 69 satellite.
Yeah.
What? Where did this come from?
Okay. So over the years, I have drifted almost everything you can drift. Now, there's some within reason. I've done Skylines, a bunch of them. I've had a bunch of JZXs, S15, a bunch of 240s, some Gs and some Zs, and even a 240Z. As far as what I like to look at, and also I restore old cars. I kind of restore, and I hate the word flip, but I buy 3/4 finished projects and finish them and sell them for a profit, and that's a big part of how I pay for drifting. So I really like old cars. I love old cars. I love B-body Plymouths, the big muscle cars. I like the big body like Torino Fords or Galaxies, Impalas, or like early Impala 65.6 Impalas. Anything that's big but sleek, and maybe you'd have seen it in NASCAR or something.
Yeah.
I just love them. Absolutely love them. And the whole time I've had drift cars during my, God knows how long it's been, 20 years or whatever, I would buy, let's say, a 64 Galaxy or a 66 Impala, or sometimes like 73. I had a 73 Malibu. I'd buy it. Maybe I'd 4-speed swap it or modern trans swap it. I even actually built a drift car once. I built a 69 Camaro, full drift car. Drifted it at one drift event. The guy offered me like 40 grand for it. I was like, oh, shoot, gotta go.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, you gone, because that was back before they weren't that much. I use that to buy an S15 and build that. But anyway, normally what I'll do is I'll buy some old big muscle or whatever you want to call it car. Like I say, usually the big fastback early 60s cars. And I'll get a set of NASCAR looking wheels on it. I'll get it low. I might get a 4-speed or something in it. I'll drive it around a little while. I'll take some pictures of it. And then I'll remind myself, oh yeah, this doesn't work. It's never going to be a drift car. It'll never handle well enough to do anything that I'm excited about doing. And I sell it off. It's gone, and some old dude finishes it his way. And then I was driving a blue JZX that I'd kind of been passed around back and forth to me over the years. And I did the first Drift Appalachia in that JZX. Loved it. Had a bleeping great time. But I came home from that event saying, all right, I'm going to do one more event in this JZX. I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to build a muscle car drift car that works. Like, whatever it takes. If I have to start over 10 times, I'm not going to quit until I built a muscle car drift car that looks the way I want as best it can and works. So I finished that event. I came and did Drifters of December, which is the next event. I said I was going to be my last one in that car. And of course, the engine blows up in that car.
God
that
dang
event. So it sealed the deal. I was like, yeah, I'm selling it with the engine blown. It had a very light knock. I think the guy didn't even.
Oh, okay. So you saw it coming.
Yeah. So I was very clear. The guy, I posted the car really cheap and was like, yeah, you need to rebearing this car. You might get away with it, but I'm not. I'm selling it as blown motor. Do not come back at me. So sold the car, and I did that. I looked in December 17th. I still owned that car. And that's going to matter in a minute, because December 17th, I still owned that car. Between then and April 7th, I believe it was, I sold that car. I bought a Camaro, like a 4th-gen Camaro, to get the drivetrain from. I bought a BMW E36 to get the suspension from. And I went with my friend Jason and Reese Conklin. I used their truck. I don't know why. It was just a guys' weekend, and we drove down to the belly of Virginia to buy this old librarian's 1969 Sports Satellite.
Oh my goodness! Did you tell them what you were doing with it?
So it was this old lady owned it, and her neighbor named Shade Tree, this flipping 6'6", super skinny dude, was kind of selling it for her because I think she had like posted it for a couple of grand, and he was like, whoa, 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 no, 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 I gotta do you the neighbor favor, you know. And he listed on the B-Body pages for like 8 grand.
Yeah.
And everybody was clamoring to get it. And I messaged him and said, hey, you know, I've got $7,500 or something, and I won't be funny about it. I don't care. As long as it's close to what you said, I'm going to come there. I'm going to smile. I'm going to hand you money, and I will not be a hassle. And he was like, sounds good to me. I just want to get her the most money I can. So, okay. I get down there, and I didn't even know the car ran and drove. So I get down there, and the guy like hands me the keys and says, take it for a ride. I'm like, what? I knew this thing ran and drove.
Oh, okay.
So okay. So I drove it around the block and pulled back up and drove it straight on the trailer and went inside and gave him what he was asking.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's awesome.
So I think 3 days after that was the first picture of the car on the dolly I made for it. I made a not a rotisserie, but just a way to roll the car around once I'd taken the drivetrain out, get it on and off of lifts. So from somewhere around December 20th to April something 10th, I built the entire car after hours at MA, having to take it off the lift and put it back on the lift every single night.
That was this year though, right?
That was this year, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then, like I said, it had to, for me, I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, it's got to be if it's going to be a muscle car drift car, it's got to be whatever I consider to be the baddest ones. It can't be, you know, some oddball model that nobody knows. I wanted a Charger. Actually, I did buy a Charger, and I churched it up a little bit and sold it for a ton of money because Chargers bring too much money.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, but I'd actually just restored a Roadrunner and sold it literally weeks before this whole thing started. Like while I had the blue car, I had the orange Roadrunner. And while I was restoring the Roadrunner, I kept taking measurements and thinking, and that made me go, "Yep, this is what I'm going to use." These are like in my mind like some of the meanest looking muscle cars ever made. They made them as they were NASCARs, like I like. I love that body of car, plain and simple. I just love the body of car, and I did some measurements and said, "Well, this might work. This could fit." At the time, the this can fit was 240 parts. I was going to do 240 SX front suspension. And somewhere in the middle of all this, I was on a flight somewhere with Brian Wilkerson, my boss. I was talking about what I was going to do, and he just so casually, as he does, was like, "Why are you doing 240 stuff?" It's like, BMW's a front rack. They're just as simple. And I was like, "You son of a bitch." I was like, I hate it. You hate it, but like I don't hate it enough not to listen. You hate it when somebody's right all effortlessly that way, you know? And he was right. BMW stuff was simple and easy. And I went and I measured a cross member on a car at work and I compared it and I was like, yep, that's going to work the best. So yeah, like I said, I bought 3 cars at the same time. I took the first 2 cars apart, then took the satellite apart.
Oh, yeah, okay. So basically, F-body drivetrain with the BMW front. What'd you do on the rear? Is it still solid rear axle?
So the rear is a solid rear axle. It's a Ford Explorer 8.8, you know, mid 90s straight axle Ford Explorer. I didn't even narrow it. It was actually 5/8 of an inch narrower than the stock stock axle anyway. I put fresh bearings in it, welded it up. I take that back. Yeah, I put 410s in it. This one had 373s, and I put 410s in it.
Oh, okay.
And made a really simple triangulated 4-link that kind of copies Mustang stuff. And when I say
Gotcha.
copies Mustang stuff,
I know when I talked to Travis, because he has
yeah,
basically the same car.
he does. He does.
He was saying that it was still leaf spring, and I knew just by looking at the cars, obviously that one was way different.
Yeah. Travis he's done, I think, as much as you're going to ever do, and in a good way. I mean, he's doing as much as you could possibly probably do with the Leafs and the stock torsion bars design.
Gotcha.
And I felt that out too when I kind of put together that Charger. Like, I was like, well, if he can do it on that suspension, I probably can. I started building that Charger, and I started kind of doing jimmies, some little pull out and get sideways stuff in that Charger. I was like, how the hell does he drive that thing?
Hey man, driver mod,
That's it. That he is. If you see him driving and you ever think, man, that just looks okay, I bet you could hand Travis any other car and he would blow your mind.
Dude, there's so many people like that. Their cars literally hold them back.
Yeah.
So where did you debut your satellite?
Okay, so I finished it in that first week of April, or finished it enough to drive in that first week of April. I drove it up and down the street here at the shop, drove it to get gas, and loaded it straight on the truck. It never had actually drifted at all. And
Okay.
I say this because this matters to me. I don't know. I like drift cars that they got to look good. It's got to draw attention. It's either bright paint or trendy kits or oddball cars that get attention. So when you tow the blue JZX somewhere, even though it was a really basic build, it was bright and had the kit and had good wheels. You drive down the road, you got your sweet lowered dually, you're going down the road, people are thumbs upping and beeping the horn and taking pictures, and that's part of the experience of going to your drift event, is getting all jazzed on that. So here I am, I've gotten a new truck. It's not lowered, it's just a white dually. And then I got this car on the trailer, this primered, rusty thing that I'm not very confident in because I've never drifted it. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm driving down the road. I drive 530 miles to Kershaw, South Carolina, to Carolina Motorsports Park. 25 miles from my house, and I've never gotten to drift there. I was really excited to drift there for Grid Life.
Yeah, Grid Life. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. It's Grid Life, Carolina. So drive that 525, 30 miles there. Not a soul looks over at your guy. Not a thumbs up, not a rev, nothing.
Was it just confusion?
I don't know. I just think it was like, yeah, that kid's bringing home a project, like, good luck, kid.
Oh boy.
and then I show up at the event, and then the people are being weird at tech. And then the people in the paddock are like, I think you're supposed to be somewhere else.
Like, no, went right through this same exact situation.
Yeah, 100% right. If it's not one of the usual cars, they're not trying to be mean. They're just like, bro, you're in the wrong place. So I was as worried that this isn't going to work as you can get. I was maybe convinced it was about to not work. And then we went out on that first run group, and I don't think it was 3 turns in. I was like, oh shit, this is going to be fine. It just drove like a big E36. Like, it was great. It gave no trouble at all. It was grossly underpowered. It was grossly underpowered. I think it had 330 wheel. But it did everything. It did fine, and they did like a spotlight on the car and all this other stuff, and it
was like the whole event just turned around in a heartbeat, huh?
Flip the switch. Yeah, oh God, this is gonna sound cocky. I came off the track after that first run group, and it went from no one looking or caring to, when I came off the track, like, people mobbed the car. It felt like something out of a movie. It was ridiculous.
It's like you just won a game of Forza Horizon or something,
Exactly. And on top of all that, like, I had been sick. I had this crazy what do you call it? Sinus infection thing that had gotten way out of hand and stuff. Because I was building the car like 18 hours a day. So I gotten real sick, and my buddies again, Jason and Reese Conklin, were taking care of me. I was staying in their RV, and I, I was just like a shell of myself until that worked, and just it was the best weekend ever, dude. It was sweet.
Yeah,
It
you're
was
like
good. Yeah.
adrenaline and hype is a hell of a drug.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was. It was good stuff. And honestly, I I got done after that first day. It was 2 days drifting, I got done after that first day. Everybody else partied, but I happily went to bed and slept 13 hours.
Wow.
Yep. Then had another good
Golly. All
day.
right. Well, man, we've already cooked right past 35 minutes.
Yeah, I'm short on an hour if we're looking.
Well,
I'm sorry, I can
we
talk.
could dive off real quick into because I can already tell anybody that's still listening, and me and Kylie, we probably could talk for 5 hours straight, and the
Yeah,
only reason we'd have to stop is because our voices ran out.
I'm pretty
Um,
bad.
so just quick dive off into man. What would you think whenever I hit you up and I was like, hey, trying to get all the muscle cars together for an event, man.
Dude, I love it. I'm not saying everybody in the world needs to drift an old muscle car, but to get some different types of folks into it, we need more of them. And to see them all together is just going to be another thing to get people excited about them and believe, hey, man, there's that many of them out there. I bet I can make one work.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
I
Uh,
just want to see more of them.
yeah. Hey, so how are you feeling about Summit Point? You've been to Summit Point before, and from my understanding, it's been a good minute since you've been back.
Yeah, I think this is going to be not quite a year since my last time there.
Okay.
Um, but I used to go there a lot. It was the home track. I went a ton. There was a lot of changes and stuff, and drifting almost ended there for a while. And during the time when it almost ended, I stopped going, and I might have went. I bet I went 5 years without going at all. And things are great there these days, and there's absolutely no reason anyone shouldn't be going to Summit for Drift Nirvana stuff. So I don't make it as often as I want because I keep going to these darn invite events. But I'm real jazzed to be back at the old home track and what they call bridge and bridge reverse and pistol courses over on Shenandoah. Man, for years they were my favorites, and I bragged to people and told people that you got to come here for forever. So it's gonna be great to come back and drift with homies and drift with the old cars on them, and it's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty excited because it will be the first time that you call it's got a nickname, right? Cattle Snake, right?
It's called Cattle Snake. Yeah,
Okay, so it'll be the first time Cattle Snake has been on that track, and so I think that's pretty cool that
absolutely.
I was
Yeah,
able to be involved with that as well.
yeah.
Where did the nickname Cattle Snake come from, anyways?
Oh, okay.
Is that a pretty long story? Because we may
No,
just have to do a
it is
separate one
it's
on
a
that.
short one. So when the car was on that dolly, it had no wheels, it had no anything. Um, and my coworker John Wilkerson, brother of Brian, the owner, um, he walks around telling dad like jokes pretty often, and he told the joke. What do you call it? What is it? What do you call a cow with no legs? And they were like, "What? We don't know." And he pointed over at my car and he said, "Cattle snake." So somehow that you know it's stuck. That ends up being its name around the shop. Um, and I wasn't calling it that online. And I think Brian Wilkerson would comment every now and then with cattle snake, and then he'd adjust it to bovine serpent.
It
So
sticks though. It really does work. I don't understand why it works, but it works.
somehow it feels right.
The
So we've been going with it.
All right. Well, I think I would love to finish off with a really fun story from my end.
All right.
Um, about kind of like how small the drift world is and how dumb some of the things Kylie is involved with.
Oh God.
And so I ran LS Fest 2024 this year. Kylie already knows the story now. And I had got in the top 32. I had to go against Brian Hopp, who is one of Kylie's friends. And
built most of his car.
built most of his car. And inevitably, Brian Hopp beat me pretty easily because my car doesn't have the horsepower and mine sucks compared to his beautifully masterpiece car. And so I come to find out after the fact, me and Kylie are talking on the phone, and he goes, "Yeah, my buddy Brian just called me and told me that thanks for all the practice. It just worked out at LS Fest."
He got his long car practice in.
It was, and I was just like, "You got to be kidding me." There's only like a handful of old school long cars, and and I went to LS Fest and ended up with the one guy who probably had the most
paired with
practice
the
against
one
one
guy that you could, who's been drifting with long old cars.
Because in practice and everything, man, it was spooking people. I mean, like when you're just trying to get that close and it's just so long, your perception and everything's just not exactly what you're used to. And nope,
100%.
not with him. He knew exactly what to do, and it's all because of freaking Kylie.
And he's come very, very close to bopping me several times. I've actually been bumped like 3 times total by friends who were just getting the normal amount close. But for this car, the normal amount, just like your car, the normal amount ain't the normal amount.
Yeah. Well, all right, guys. We want to finish off with that fun story about how Kylie indirectly screwed me at LS Fest.
Sorry, bro.
All right, guys. Well, that is our last Old Ironslides interview of this year. Unless somebody sneaks in last minute, I'll be a little mad at them, but it'll be all right because they're going to show up. But, guys, this weekend, you're going to see a huge, awesome event at Summit Motorsports or Summit Point Motorsports Park. Kylie, thank you so much for the time,
Yes,
man.
sir.
I'm sorry we went way over time, but these stories were so fascinating and awesome. I think everybody's going to really enjoy them. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it, man. I can't wait to see you this weekend.